Today we're talking to Dr. Kimberly Huesing, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services for the Menifee Union School District. And she's going to tell us a little bit more than what we've heard so far about how the distance learning program is going to work at MUSD. Thank you for joining us, Kimberly.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Sure. Could you just kind of start out by describing how it's going to be different from in the spring? I know in the spring, teachers were not required or held as accountable to teach a curriculum because everything was happening so quickly. But there's been a lot of planning that's gone into what you're getting ready to unveil, correct?
Absolutely. So, and to kind of tweak that, the accountability was that we had to hold our students harmless in the spring so that whatever their participation was, it wouldn't hurt their grades. So our expectation still was that the teachers would reach out to students and provide extension and enrichment activities, but definitely there wasn't a lot of new lessons being taught because we couldn't be sure what kind of access kids had at home. So moving forward this year, we do have one-to-one Chromebook availability for students. So I think what we started out saying is, let's check out one per family because we weren't sure how long this was going to last. Maybe the kids were going to come back to school and we wanted to limit the liability of things getting broken. Well, now we know starting this year, we don't know what to expect. We need kids to have access to learning. So we have one-to-one availability for Chromebooks. So if families only checked out one, they should know that even last year when families contacted us and said, oh, we got 3 kids, can we have another Chromebook? Absolutely, we are able to provide that, and we will do that this year. We have enough Chromebooks so that every student can have one at home. And that will be really important because there will be live and what we're calling synchronous activities for every grade level, and they might be at the same time. So you might need to have like an 8th graders in their 3rd period class and a 4th grader, they're having their live synchronous activity at school. So the sharing probably wouldn't work out in that situation. So families really should check out that 2nd or 3rd Chromebook as they need. Additionally, what's new this year, and I could tell this story a little bit, it'll take me a little bit longer because what happened is we had 3 task forces come together over the summer. The first task force was to discuss traditional school setting and what that would look like with enhanced cleaning and safety procedures. And then we had a task force for if we were going to have a hybrid program, what would it look like? What would be the safety measures needed? What does social distancing really mean? And how do we meet the needs of the students that are working online that day, along with teaching the kids in the classroom? So doing 2 jobs at once. And then we had a task force for Distance Learning Plus. And you'll see distance learning with the plus sign on everything we do because we want to really be sure that we're explaining that distance learning of last year was really just student engagement. And distance learning this year is truly new curriculum being taught. I mean, you were a 2nd grader last year, you're a 3rd grader this year, you're going to be doing 3rd grade curriculum, held to 3rd grade accountability and 3rd grade standards. So it's distance learning plus with all of the accountability assessments. Kids are going to have to take tests at home. Teachers will be giving feedback on assignments. So that's the difference between last year and this year. And how we're supporting our teachers is the information that came out of those task forces were suggested schedules, was suggested amount of time for synchronous and asynchronous, how we would engage students, because even if the teachers had great engagement, how would we get them online? How would we hold them accountable? How do we make sure they come back the next day? So all of those strategies, including another 2nd level task force that came together to write lesson plans and provide a model Google Classroom for every grade level and subject area in elementary, the grade level, and in middle school, the subject areas. So basically every teacher will come back on August 10th and learn about the lesson plans in the Google Classroom that has been prepared for them. And of course, it's not going to be, they're not mandated to use that exactly. It's just an exemplar. So if a teacher is new to Google Classroom and is really kind of nervous about how to work it, they'll have a model classroom that they can look at and take from that is exactly to their grade level standards and their lessons that they need to teach the first 11 days of school, first 2 weeks of school. And then if a teacher's a pro at Google Classroom and super good at it, they'll say, okay, well, what is it that I need to cover? Let me take those elements that I hadn't included, but I might be amazing at Google Classroom and I'm offering just a little bit more. But every classroom has an exemplar of what is expected in Menifee for the teachers, for our students, and for input from the students to give back as feedback. And actually, that's not something unique to Menifee. We are following the Senate Bill 98, which governs how we're going to run instruction, including accountability and having contact with every student every day. So if you've heard us in board meetings, we've talked about making sure that we are reaching out to students. And we had some students who were unreachable at some point last year, and we were able to track down all of those families. We had families that went all the way to Alaska and were doing distance learning. There were some students who had to go and stay with family in Texas. They were doing distance learning. So we tracked them all down and made sure that we were servicing our students, and that accountability will only increase coming in this new school year. That teachers, if they haven't, it's written in the law, if they haven't seen a student in their classes for 3 days, they have to reach out to the families, they have to reach out again, and then we have a whole positive behavior input to follow up and send them that inquiry to the counselor, to the ladies in the office, to make sure we track down those students.
So how is attendance taken? Will the teacher see the student's face on the screen and that's how they know they're there, or because they're logged in, or what?
Mm-hmm. Both ways. So we can take attendance if the students read an assignment and complete the work and turn it in, say for example on a distance day when the teachers are not with them, some asynchronous activities. And also teachers would take attendance when they're reading a read aloud. I have a third grade teacher who said, I want to start every day with a read aloud because I know that grabs the kids' attention. And then I can just quickly take attendance on Google Meet. You can see the kids on the right. They just do a screen capture. And then we have a student information system. And we just take attendance and we click them in and account for them.
So I am not familiar with Google Classroom, but probably a lot of the students already are. But I'm just curious if it's a synchronous session and the teacher is speaking basically directly to the students in real time, and a student has a question, can they pose it at that time so that the teacher hears it and answers in front of everyone? How does that work?
So each teacher has their own, just like they have classroom expectations and norms, they will teach the norms for their Google Classroom. Google Classrooms have like a little video session like we're doing now on Zoom, and there's also a chat bar on the right-hand side. So even our first graders have seen them unmute their microphone, ask a question, remute. They know how to do that. And they also will then type into the chat if they have a question. Additionally, we know that maybe kids are going to have to do this when their parents get home from work. So pretty much, I don't want to say 100% because if I say that, I'll always be wrong. But most teachers are going to record even their synchronous activities so they can be viewed later. So say, for example, like my child is going to be at home while I'm at work all day. And I'll have to go home and check in with her, like, okay, what did you do? Like, which class said what? You know, I know my child. I'm going to have to check in with her to make sure that it's all done. So I'm going to need to go back into her Google Classroom and see, okay, what videos were posted? Did you watch this one? And check in. And so knowing that, we've talked with our teachers about making sure it's accessible for the review when parents get home. They're tired, they've worked all day, but they still need to review with what their child has done and make sure that they're supporting them.
Right. So if the parent gets home in the evening, reviews the work, and has a question for the teacher who is not online at the time, is it just like sending an email to the teacher, or how does that work?
You know, that's such an interesting question because I found myself working very long hours when we first started distance learning, and I sort of lost track of, is it work time? Is it not work time? Like, I need to be better about this because it's not healthy to be spending all this time in front of a computer and feeling really worried about meeting expectations.
Right.
So what we've asked the teachers to do, and that's very common, the parents are going to come home, and you can understand then the teachers also then will need to attend to their families in the evening too. So what we have decided is that the parents obviously will email, and then teachers have 24 hours to return that email. And in the teacher day, there's time where it's, I think people like to call it office hours. We've just called it check-in, that they are able to answer their emails. And so we've work that in the workday to make sure that there's time to make those connections and follow up, because we know that's so important. And the timing is not going to be perfect. I mean, not all parents are going to be home during the teacher's workday. So the 24-hour turnaround on emails.
Is there going to be any accommodation for people that don't have internet access? Does the district have a way to support to make sure everyone can get online?
So yeah, and actually we're doing something new and exciting I want to share. We have, our district is kind of spread out, but if you think about our 4 corner schools, Quail Valley is a corner school, Boris is a corner school, HCMS and HHSA. So those are kind of our 4 corner schools. We have invested in a capital project to put large antenna on the front of each of those buildings to project Wi-Fi into all of the parking lots of those 4 buildings. And why we're excited about that is that the Chromebooks that students are going to be assigned have the ability to download and save. So for example, say Wi-Fi is not really strong at somebody's house, they can go and park in the school parking lot, download all the work for the day or the week, and then be able to do it from home if they don't have Wi-Fi access. Additionally, for example, we have a few homeless families who we check out something that's called a Khajiit. And then wherever they are, the Khajiit can get cell phone service, and then it's used as a hotspot. So we have invested in additional Khajiits. If families don't have Wi-Fi access at home, can't drive to the school and download the materials, then they know that they either contact the Family Engagement Center and Mrs. Burt, or they contact their site principal, and then we assign the Khajiits to support them. There were a couple of families we found out didn't have Wi-Fi access, and our IT department drove to their home to make sure the Khajiit worked, and then was able to assign them the Khajiit. So we just really need that open communication between families of what their needs are, and then we'll go to we'll go the distance to what families need.
Okay. When will will there be class schedules that are released to the students as far as the exact times and what subjects they're going to have, or how does that work?
Yes. So in middle school, students usually get their schedules like the day school starts or the day before. I'm not exactly sure how each one of our schools does that, but it will be released through the parent portal. Parents will get an email to log into the student's account, and they'll be able to see that. And then also that's how, through the parent email, so this is really important. I'm glad you asked this because it just reminded me. We really need parents to share their current information with us. So we can email our students, once they are enrolled, but we can't get access to enrolling the students unless the parents have their correct email and phone numbers registered with us. And you would be surprised. So many parents say, I don't even know which email did we use to register our kids. Right. And that's how we're going to need to communicate with parents. So we need to really encourage our parents to keep their email and phone number contacts current with their site. And that happens every year. We update our information. So that's how parents will get that information on how to log in to the student information system in the parent portal and get that information.
Okay. Now we know that the future of this whole pandemic is uncertain. Things change week to week. So yep. Are you committing to this distance learning plus for the entire school year, or halfway through, if the state says it's safe to have children go back, then do you reevaluate and have classroom instruction? How would that work?
Yeah, I would say that we're reevaluating what we are offering on a daily basis, honestly. Okay. If you remember our board meetings, at first it was, let's start a distance program, no problem, we're gonna start one. I'm actually applying for a school code so that we will continue having a distance program forever in Menifee. So we were going to have distance and traditional. Well, then the pandemic did not help us out, and things increased or continued to worsen. So then it was social distancing with the hybrid, and then the distance program. And 2 days or 3 days after we made that decision at a board meeting, then the governor came out and said, oh, nope, Riverside is on the watch list. You can't have students in class at the beginning of the school year if you're on the watch list, or you're not off the watch list for 15 days. And right. So that's where we are. We had to shift a little bit to make sure that we had our program straight. And we did, including the lesson plans being ready for teachers, and increased training, which I can talk to you as well when we change the calendar. But so the point I was getting at with reevaluating daily, honestly.
Okay.
So the plan for starting school as of today, what is today? July 29th, barring any unforeseen circumstances for changes, what we're going to do is students are going to start with their assigned class schedule or their assigned grade level teacher, and we're going to start the school year. Which is a change because we did have the distance only all year and then the traditional. We called the families who chose distance all year, and many of the families were like, I signed up for that, but I don't know if that's really what we want for the whole year. We feel trapped that we had to make this decision for the whole year. So there were so many families who shared that with us. We were shifted, reevaluated, like you said, when are we reevaluating? To start the school year with assigned schedule and teacher, so schedule for middle school and teacher for elementary, just like we normally would, and starting distance. Now, if there comes a point that we can bring kids in for a hybrid situation, nothing changes because they can still have their same teacher and come hybrid or not come. They could stay all distance if they wanted. And then if there ever comes a time when, say, there's a vaccine now and we can open up schools, then at that point we would ask families, all right, so you've been with your teacher, maybe we've done hybrid, and now you're going to have a choice of if you want to stay distance or come in school for traditional. We feel like then families would have a better understanding of what is actually happening in the circumstances to make a more informed choice.
Right.
Because as you know, we don't really know what's going to happen next week with this virus, and things may change, and we may be in a full lockdown. Who knows? But we feel like keeping it with their teacher, and then they'll at least have the information on the pivot point. My request of my cabinet when we're making those decisions is always going to be around students. So I requested, hey, can we think about the time periods of like making it make sense for student progress? So maybe at a progress report time or the semester time, and really making it make sense about student learning. So we're going to be taking into account the pandemic, student needs, student learning, and really trying to make the best choices for kids. And when you say, hey, when are you reevaluating? I truly want to say, like, we really reevaluate and consider those options every day.
Okay. Now, I know you have an important announcement that we want to make sure everyone knows about, and it concerns what day school will begin, right?
Definitely.
How's that different?
Yes, thanks for asking. Last night at the board meeting, as part of the memo of understanding between the teachers union and the school district, it was suggested that we offer more opportunity for our teachers to have professional development, and it was mutually agreed upon that that's a really good thing for us. So we pulled out the 2 professional development days that were later on in the school calendar and pushed them up to the front of the year. So that moves back the start date from the 12th past the 13th to the 14th, because we use those professional development days up front for teachers instead of embedding them in the school year. So then those previously, the school calendar will need to look different because those other days that were non-student days, that were professional development days later in the school year, then now those are up front. So that's good news for my department, because then we are planning the professional development for our teachers. So I think one of the things that we can also talk about is, what is the professional development that teachers have had? And that is an indicator of how things are going to be very different for students in the fall as well, or in August as well. So for example, our teachers are going to have 2 more days of professional development, but additionally, 253 of our teachers participated in something called Google Camp just last week. And Google Camp, it sounds just like what it sounds like. It's mini lessons for 2 days of how to implement an app to increase the productivity in your Google Classroom, how to increase student engagement, how to do an assessment online via a different program that you can buy to add on. And from that, our teachers had really great suggestions on what they needed. and we were able to negotiate contracts with vendors to increase our capacity for something as simple as, it's called Screencastify. And when you and I talked about live video or recorded video, Screencastify makes making videos for teachers so much easier and really teacher friendly. So we invested in that. We have we're purchasing that for next year to make our distance learning better. Something called Pear Deck that teachers really liked, that added it's an app that adds on to Google Slides, which students use for their classroom activities, and they're summer, and then we're validated by the teachers who attended Google Camp that said, yes, we can't live without this. So all of those apps we're providing professional development for in the fall. Or I keep saying in the fall, it's like in 2 weeks.
Right.
So all of the new programs that we're buying, we're also providing professional development for our teachers so that they'll be able to use them in the lessons for their students.
We've had several questions about special ed students and what accommodations are made for them if they are normally required to meet one-on-one with a teacher. How is that going to be handled?
Well, some students do receive either small group or one-on-one therapy for speech. And in March, our teachers really didn't have a lot of training, or if any at all, about telephonic speech therapy or virtual speech therapy. So we have contracted with a company to provide professional development for our speech teachers in that exact area, how to deliver effective video conferencing speech therapy. So that was requested by our teachers, needed so that we can meet the needs of our students. In March, teachers weren't able to be in their classrooms either, and in the classrooms we have computers with cameras, not just the Chromebook cameras. So now teachers are going to be working in their classrooms. They're able to, and they'll have access to their full computer programs, all of their manipulatives they have to help students. So that video therapy will happen and will be enhanced by the training. Additionally, our one-on-one aides or our student aides for special ed, last year they were not holding their own individual Google Meets with students, but through consultation with our legal partners, we have developed a plan that they can be, and our teachers will monitor that conversation. You know, they can pop into the Google Meets, but our aides are going to be able to work one-on-one with students. So we know that that's going to really help our students have more access to instructional time, and also help our parents because there will be a little bit more guidance there. Additionally, staffing is going to be my last point. So the curriculum edition is something that we purchased specifically for special ed, is a dyslexia program to help students with decoding. When students are just learning how to read, it's all about a code and matching the sounds to symbols. And for us in education, we call that decoding. So the E has different sounds it makes and where it's placed in the word, and all of that is very confusing to some children. And so we bought a special program that assists systematically to help with that. And so that extra program has been purchased, and teachers will receive training in that, and it will be available for students come August. Julie Hong, she is taking on the additional role of being the director of special ed, and we're kind of distributing her other responsibilities so that we're all working on a fair playing field. But Dr. Hong actually is not new to the special ed game. She herself was a special ed teacher and then a principal with special ed components at her school. And in her previous job to Menifee, she was actually the director of special ed in her previous district. So she's a really good match for the needs that we have, and has a vision for how we can increase services to students and increase training for our service providers, not only the classroom teachers, but our therapists, and also training for our aides. So we're really excited about and thankful that she stepped into that role. And then finally, we added 2 program specialist positions. One of the program specialists is more of a behavior specialist, and then we completed our staffing with the second program specialist. So now we have 4 program specialists, just like we did last year.
Okay.
And those 2 people, one took a promotion and one moved with her spouse. So it's just normal transition, but we're able to refill those positions with quality people. We're really excited.
Okay. One last question I had was regarding the social interaction or lack of that students will have in this, especially at the middle school level. Are there going to be any opportunities to do modified versions of like clubs, yearbook, those kind of things, so they still feel like they're getting some of that extracurricular activity?
So, well, I know one school is still continuing with their, I just happened to talk with the principal yesterday, and she was very excited about sharing about her student council at Cali
Oh, okay.
Kirkpatrick. And so all of the schools will have the characteristics that they are going to try to continue. They've been doing video. I know Tawila does a video every morning, and the students help with the video production. I
Right.
know Mr. Orr at Freedom Crest does every morning, and so does South Shore, the video conferencing, like a video from the principal kind of thing. Just to continue with that school feel, I think is so important for our students to feel part of the school. But regarding the social emotional component of students, I don't think I can explain enough how concerned we are with the connectedness of our students,
Mhm.
um, just the what students have had to go through in this pandemic, what we've all gone through as a society. I mean, it's really amazing how our lives changed overnight.
Right.
And there's a lot of concern about students needing that connection to each other and to school. That's how we develop as a society. So there's a lot of emphasis in that. We're going to rely heavily on our counselors to support our teachers with the social emotional learning lessons. It was fortuitous that last year we invested heavily in a social emotional learning curriculum called Second Step. And our counselors are really taking the lead on that, making videos for the teachers so that they can push it out and then support it, so that it's consistent across grade levels and just the students feeling connected. One thing that one of my teachers does that I think is so neat, and I asked her to include that in her lesson planning. She's on the lesson planning committee. She does a Google form every morning, and the students check in while she's like reading aloud or something. The students check in their Google form. What's new with you today, and how are you feeling? And she says sometimes it's, my cat got out a little bit too late last night and we had to go find it, or something. Sometimes it's, I didn't get breakfast this morning. So
Right.
just that connection, it's private to the teacher, but it enables the teacher to connect directly with that child. And once they build that connection and they have that, they know that that's the constant. Oh, I have an opportunity to talk to my teacher. And that's what we're looking for, is to build that connection with their teacher so we can meet the needs of our students. One thing we didn't mention here in the questions that you and I had talked about is about food service.
Oh,
And every
okay.
school will be serving food, and during distance learning, parents can swing by and buy lunch. Students who are on free and reduced lunch will have access to those services at every single school site.
Good. Well, I know this is going to be a huge challenge for everyone, but it's obvious that a lot of thought and planning has been put into this. And
Mm-hmm.
we greatly appreciate you coming on and explaining a lot of this. I think this will be very helpful for families that are still wondering exactly how this is going to work, and maybe had some of the questions that you've been able to answer here. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
thank you again for joining us.
Sure.
And we will post this for everyone to see and get ready for August 14th.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And to all the parents out there, I'm a parent too, and I'm with you. It's going to be such a challenge this year. We'll figure it out together, and connect early and often with your teacher, because they'll be your partner in what we're going through. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.